Hi there. When I started off my sales career, I found that the kickoff, the key to selling, is to get somebody to talk to, is to find a customer. So the most important part of selling is prospecting. It's finding new people, qualified people to talk to. Here's a rule, is the key to selling success is to spend more time with better prospects. 6 words. Spend more time with better prospects. If you can do that, you can control your future. You can double your income. You can become one of the most successful salespeople in your field. Now, the most successful salespeople have the most complete strategies and plans to develop the highest quality and quantity of prospects who can and will buy within a reasonable period of time. Remember that a prospect is someone who can and will buy within a reasonable period of time. Now, in this session, you're going to learn some of the most important ideas for prospecting and how you can apply them to your sales work to increase the number of sales you make faster and easier than ever before. And believe me, this material works. In 30 years of selling, I have found there's some things that you can do that can double and triple your success in prospecting. Remember, as I said, the key to success in selling is to spend more time with better prospects. And the only question is, how do you do that? Now, a prospect can be defined in several ways. A prospect is someone who has, 1, they have a problem that your product or service can solve. Now, here's an important point. A prospect can be clear that they have a problem, or they can be unclear. Whenever a prospect says, "I'm not interested," what they're saying is that I'm not aware that your product or service can help me in a cost-effective way. So never be put off by, "I'm not interested," or "I'm not in the market," because it just means that the prospect may not know that your product or service can really help them solve a problem that they're wrestling with. Now, the second quality of a good prospect is that they have a need that your product or service can satisfy. And what we have found is that a need is emotional. If you can identify a need, it's like touching an emotional nerve in the customer. And actually, the customer does not even become interested in your conversation until you can identify a need, and then suddenly they become alert. Then they're interested in finding out more. Another good quality of a prospect is they have a goal that your product or service can help them to achieve. So if you can help a prospect achieve a goal, whether it's a personal or financial or personal attractiveness or business or profit or tax relief goal, if you can help them identify a goal and offer to solve it in a cost-effective way, you can create a customer. And the fourth quality of prospects is that they have a pain or a concern that your product or service can take away. I'll give you an example. I started to have pains in my back recently, and I thought it was muscular pain, so I tried stretching, and then I thought maybe it was overwork, so I tried hot tubs and massages and so on. I finally found that it was a problem with my spine, and the pain was so distracting. I went to doctors, I went to chiropractors, I went to masseuse experts. I finally got an MRI and went and got what is called an epidural. In other words, it's when I had a pain, I was willing to do anything to take the pain away. Your job is to identify pains that customers have that they want and need someone to take away. So we say that prospecting is the most important part of selling. One of the most important questions for you, and I started asking this when I was a young salesperson, is keep asking, where is my next sale coming from? Where is my next sale coming from? And then ask this question, is what I am doing right now leading to a sale? Where is my next sale coming from? And is what I'm doing right now leading to that sale? And keep working on that. The rule is that you should spend 80% of your time prospecting until you have so many prospects that you don't have time in the day to see them all. Now, here's a discovery. The top 10% of salespeople open 80% of the new accounts and end up earning 70 to 80% of the money. The good news is that there are prospects everywhere, but they're not all your prospects. Remember this, just because a person can use or buy your product or service, it doesn't mean that you can sell them your product or service. Interesting discovery, you'll always sell to customers at your own level of knowledge and experience. If you're a new salesperson, you'll sell to young and small customers. If you're an experienced salesperson, you'll sell to bigger and more knowledgeable customers. So there may be prospects, but they're not all your prospects. And here's another very important point, is 80% of all the people who could buy your product or service from you today do not even know that you exist. They have no idea about your product or service or your company or yourself. So there's lots of prospects out there. Now, a good prospect has definite characteristics, and you must think through what they are. And we mentioned this earlier. A good prospect, first of all, has a real need for what you are selling. Rule is, no need, no sale. It's amazing how many salespeople work really hard talking to prospects who really don't need it. And remember, it's not that you think they need it, it's that they feel that they need it. A second quality of a good prospect is a good prospect has the power and the authority to make the buying decision. One of the most important parts of strategic selling is getting to the buyer, getting to the person who can say yes or no, as we'll talk about later. Third is a good prospect likes you and your company as well as your product. The most important quality for success in sales, as you'll find, is likability, which of course is based on your self-esteem and your self-concept. But if the customer likes you, they're 80% of the way to buying from you, because people only buy from people they like. And if they like you, they're much more open to your offering. And another quality of a good prospect is he or she can be a multiple purchaser if satisfied. Many companies will work very hard to get a large company or customer to just buy one of their products and then work hard to make them happy because they can then buy dozens. I remember when Apple started off, they worked very hard to get a computer into Citibank, and then they got 1,000 Apples into Citibank and became a major suppliers of computers to corporate America and the world. Now, another characteristic of a good prospect is a center of influence. This is a person who can open doors for you to other prospects. A center of influence means that if this person buys from you, other people say, oh, he or she bought? Wow. Or you can use their name as a reference, and you can say, so-and-so is one of our customers. Oh, Citibank bought the Apple computer? Well, then other companies all over the world can buy it because Citibank's a pretty big and smart company. And finally, a good prospect is geographically easy to sell and to service. This is important. Your very best prospect, if possible, is in the next office. So you can walk out of your office and into their office and make the sale. The further away your prospect is, and the more difficult it is to get there and to see them, the less attractive they are, even if they have great buying potential. Now, there are 7 characteristics of poor prospects that you can use to sort them out quickly, because remember this, in prospecting, the most valuable thing you have is your time. And you must be very, very fastidious about the way you use your time. And you must not spend your time with poor prospects who represent a low or no return on time invested, called ROTI. A poor prospect is a low ROTI. So here's an example of a poor prospect. First of all, they see little benefit in what you're offering. You present or you talk about the features and benefits of your product or service, and they say, yeah, well, okay, and they look at your stuff and they throw it down. They're just not motivated to buy it. Now, this could be because they have no need, no want, no desire. It could be because they're negative themselves. It could be for 100 reasons, but it's not your problem. If they're not really interested, it's not a good prospect. Another quality, a poor prospect has a difficult and negative personality. You and I have had that same experience over and over again, dealing with a negative person. They complain, they don't like your product, they complain about their job. A negative person is really not a good prospect for anything that anyone else is selling. A poor prospect also argues or complains continually about your price or your quality. A poor prospect often criticizes you. Well, you cost too much, or it doesn't look like it's that good. Or even worse is a poor prospect is comparing you with competitors and saying, your competitors have better products, or your competitors have better prices. These are people that you're wasting your time with. A poor prospect is one who is happy with his existing supplier. Now, this is an interesting point. I had a salesman come up to me at a seminar recently, and he said, I've been trying to sell to this customer, and this customer is really happy with the company they're dealing with, and they won't even give me a chance. What's the secret strategy to getting in the door? And I said, forget about it. The fact is that the other salesperson and the other company is doing exactly right in taking such good care of that customer that they have no interest in buying from you or anyone else. Your job is to go out and get your own customers and then take such good care of them that nobody else can approach them. Another characteristic of a poor prospect is that this person would be a small purchaser of your product or service in any case. In other words, if you did everything right and you called them back and you made presentations, they could only buy a little bit and they could only buy once. So they're not really a good use of your time. They're not a good ROTI, return on time investment. Now, another characteristic is a poor prospect is not a good source of referrals. Even if you sell to this person and this person is happy, nobody knows who they are. They can only buy once. You can't use their name to sell to other people, so it's not as good an investment of your time as other things. And another characteristic of a poor prospect is a poor prospect is difficult to visit or to service geographically. A poor prospect may be located at a distance, so you have to travel a long way to take care of them, and it's not a good use of your time. Remember, the only thing that you have to sell is your time, so you must be very, very careful about using your time to its highest advantage. Now, there are 4 keys to prospecting, to thinking through whom you're going to call on before you begin work. And this is strategic thinking, very much the kind of thinking we talked about earlier. The first is specialization. And in specialization, you specialize. You ask, what exactly is your product or service designed to do? What result does it achieve? And who am I going to specialize in serving? A very good friend of mine started off in a competitive industry many years ago, and he decided that the very best people for him to specialize in was medical professionals. So instead of just going out and calling on doctors and dentists and chiropractors, he began to study the special financial situations of medical professionals, the way their money is earned, their expenses, the way it's taxed, their long-term financial goals. And he began to write articles and to interview medical professionals. Within 2 years, he had a reputation for being one of the most knowledgeable people in his field in dealing with doctors and dentists and other medical professionals, and people began to come to him. Today, he's a multi-millionaire and one of the most respected people in his field because he's specialized. Now, the second strategic part of thinking is differentiation. This is really the most important part. They say that all professional selling is differentiation, which is asking what is your unique selling feature or competitive advantage? What is it that your product or service offers that makes it different or better from any other product or service? And who are those customers who most appreciate what your product or service does for them that no other competitor can offer? Your ability to differentiate yourself and set yourself apart from your competition is the key to great sales success. Now, the 4th strategic variable in selling is called segmentation. Segmentation is dividing your market, chopping it up, and asking what specific customers in the marketplace can most benefit from your area of specialization and your unique selling proposition. You see, there are prospects who will pay a lot, and they'll pay it immediately for the special offers that you can make for them, the special qualities that you can bring them, and your job is to find them. As we say, if you want to make a lot of sales, fish for whales. Fish for people who are on the verge or capable of buying your product or service, and as a result are less price sensitive. Now the fourth variable is concentration. Focus all of your energies on your very best prospects, the ones who are the most likely to buy the soonest. I used to work for a sales organization, and every single week we would sit down around the table, all the salespeople. It's a very professional company, and each salesperson would have to explain to the manager who they were working on and where their next sale was coming from. They would have to explain the prospects they were working with and their potential. Is how much could they buy? How soon could they buy? How big a customer could they be? And how far along were we in terms of milestones to help them to buy from us? And it really kept us focused. Keep asking, where is our next sale going to come from? And where is the biggest potential prospect that I'm working on today? Now, prospect and customer analysis comes before you begin your prospecting activities. So ask some of these questions. First one is, who is using your product or service today? Either from you or from someone else. But here's the great question, who will be using it in the future? Remember, all successful business lies in the future in some way. Now, a second question is, why should someone buy your product at all? Why should they buy it from your company, if they're going to buy it at all, rather than from some other company? Why should they buy it from you personally, rather than from someone else? These are really important questions for you to ask. What is it that you have to do to be the preferred supplier of your product? Another question in marketing is, who exactly is your customer? Who buys from you today? What are the characteristics and qualities of people who buy and who buy from you the fastest and who have the least objections and who have the least amount of price resistance? Who are the customers that are buying from you now? Who are the customers who will be buying from you tomorrow? Now here's another question. Why does your customer buy? Remember, customers are motivated for some reason. As we say, motivation requires motive. What benefits does your customer receive when he or she buys from you? Another question that they ask is, what is your value offering? What is the offering that you give to a prospect that will cause the prospect to give you money to enjoy it? One of the words that we use more and more today is transformation. Is what is the result or benefit or outcome or transformation that your ideal customer will experience if they buy from you? What is the result or benefit that your current customers are receiving that make them the happiest? Another great question is, who or what is your competition for the customer? In other words, why don't everybody buy from you? And you have to be very clear, who is my competition? I just took my family on a cruise in the Caribbean. And I've worked for the cruise lines before, and I asked them the question, who is your competition, so I can design my talks. And they say, our competition is not other cruise ships. Our competition is land-based vacations. Our competition is people who want to go to resorts or the mountains or the beach. We don't compete with the other cruise ships because cruising is growing every year. We compete with other forms of vacation. So people say, I don't have any competition. Of course you do. Customers have a limited amount of money, and they can do one of three things. They can buy from you, they can buy from someone else, or they can buy nothing at all. So you have to find out, why don't they buy from you? And why do customers buy from your competition? What advantages do your customers perceive in buying from your competitor? Here's an important point. Never criticize your successful competitor. Learn from your competitor. Admire your competitor. Study your competitor. And if you talk to a prospect who's buying from your competitor, ask them, never criticize a competitor in front of a prospect who's using their service, because it just says to the prospect that they're stupid. So what you do is you say, what is it about that product that you like the most? and listen and see if you can't duplicate that when you present your own product and maybe do them one better. Now, ask your customers what weaknesses do they perceive in your product or service offering. I learned this technique many years ago from an expert, and he would say this to kind of build relationships and build authenticity. He would say, Mr. Prospect, you know, no product or service is perfect, including this one, the one I'm selling. What weaknesses can you see in what I have shown you so far? And what will happen is they'll often tell you, well, since you ask, this is a problem and that's a problem. They're telling you the problems you have to solve to make the sale. Then your next question is obviously, how can you offset the customer's perceived weaknesses in your product or service? How can you do or not do, how can you put in or take out something that will cause your customer to say, this is a good product? Another question is, who are your non-customers? And non-customers, by the way, are the biggest potential market. These are people who do not buy from you, and they don't buy from your competitors, and they don't buy at all, but they can't buy if they had a good reason. Today, you'll find that people are making fortunes by developing apps that are downloaded thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of times. Angry Birds has been downloaded more than 1 billion times and has made the founders into wealthy, wealthy people. But the interesting thing is that there's countless iPhone and Android phone users that still haven't used many of these apps. The biggest market are the non-customers. How could you get non-customers to become customers? So ask, why don't they buy? What is it that causes them to hold back from buying? Why are they non-customers? Is it because they haven't heard about you, or is it because they don't perceive the value in your product or service? What's the reason? Because if you can find that, you can actually go after a huge non-customer market that nobody is selling to. So describe your ideal customer in as much detail as possible. And we talked about this a little bit before. Location, for example. Where is your customer located, both geographically, within a city or state, and within his or her own company? In what kind of industry or business or level of income does your existing customer have? What kind of customer has the most pressing need for your product? If you could say, who needs my product more than anyone else, and you could identify them and focus on them, you could double your sales. One of the examples I use, I say, imagine that you sell fire extinguishers and you find a person whose hair is on fire. That's a good prospect. That person needs your product or service, is not price sensitive, needs it now, wants it now, and has a pressing need. Where could you find customers who sort of have that intense need for what you're selling? Now, another question is, what customers have the most positive attitude toward you and your company? When you think about customers that you speak to, the ones that you like and the ones who like you, which are the ones that like your company the most, and why? Why do they like your company the most? Because your happy, satisfied customers will often give you very good indicators of what you should be saying to new prospects and customers to get them to buy. What are the demographics of your ideal customer? Again, this is one of the most important of all questions in market research. What is their age? What is their education? What is their income? What position do they have in their business? And so on. And how can you best convince your ideal prospect to buy? In other words, you'll find that customers buy usually for a single reason. You may have many offerings and benefits in your product or service, but there's one thing that will cause customers to buy more than anything else. What is it? And so finally, what are the key arguments that you can use in order of priority to get new prospects and to get those prospects interested in what you're selling? And finally, to win the sale, what must the customer to be convinced of? To talk to you in the first place, what must the customer be convinced of? Prospecting is the kickoff in the Super Bowl of sales success. Your job is to be a really, really good prospector. Your job is to keep your sales pipeline full. The more and better prospects you are working with at any given time, the more likely it is that you'll have the kind of sales that you need to be among the top people in your field. You must always be thinking about better ways to get better prospects. Think through who they are, where they are, and why they might buy from you before you go out. Now, here are some questions you can ask and answer to apply these ideas on prospecting to your sales activities. Question number 1, what are the 3 main benefits to you for becoming excellent at prospecting? In other words, why do you want to become excellent in the first place? Question number 2, give 3 characteristics of an excellent prospect for what you sell, based on what's in this course and based on your own experience. Number 3, give 3 characteristics of a poor prospect for your product or service. One that is not a good use of your time. One that you should just cut off talking to as soon as you identify that they're not a good prospect. Number 4, what exactly is your product or service designed to do to improve the life or work of your customer? In other words, how does your customer's life change for the better, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, as the result of using your product or service? This is the key to finding better prospects and to making more sales. Number 5, what are your 3 unique selling features or competitive advantages? 3 parts about your offering that make them superior to any of your competitors. These become the core arguments in getting more appointments with better prospects. Number 6, what specific customers in the marketplace can most benefit from the special qualities or benefits of your product or service? Who are your very best potential customers, and how can you get at them? And number 7 is list 3 reasons why a potential customer should buy from you and your company rather than from your best competitor. Remember, you must know the answer to this question before you go out. And finally, what one action are you going to take immediately as a result of what you have learned in this session? Whatever it is, do it now.